There's a particular kind of knock that doesn't belong on your front door at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. Not the friendly thump-thump of a neighbor, not the casual package delivery tap. No, this one was heavier. Intentional. The kind of knock that walks in with muddy shoes and doesn't wipe its feet. I opened the door expecting a clipboard or a sales pitch. Instead, I got Levi Harding. Tall, vaguely nervous, and about 5 years younger than me, wearing the kind of smug smile you only earn by breaking someone else's heart. "Evening," he said. "Can I help you?" "You must be Callum. I think we need to talk." Right then, I knew. I didn't need details. I didn't need names. Some part of me, maybe the part that still believed my wife loved me, cracked quietly, like a hairline fracture in a favorite mug. And still, I played dumb. About what? He glanced past me into the living room, where Anna's scarf was draped over the back of the couch, right where she'd tossed it this morning after saying she was going to the gym. "About your wife," he said, and I could almost hear the capital W in his tone. He wasn't smug now, just resigned, maybe even a little sorry. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "Start talking." He did. Not all of it. Not yet. Just enough. Anna and Levi worked together, frequent business dinners, late nights at the office, shared rides to seminars. I'd heard all the excuses before, rehearsed in her breezy tone, always laced with enough believability to keep me from asking more. "She said it was over with you," he muttered, staring at his shoes. "Over with me?" I blinked. "She said that to you?" "She said she was tired, that you didn't see her anymore." I laughed once, the dry kind. The sound of disbelief rusted over. "I didn't see her?" "I've spent the last 3 months trying to figure out what was going wrong, Levi. I thought she was depressed. I brought her flowers. I cooked dinner. I offered to go to therapy." He winced. "She said you were nice. Too nice." There it was. The dagger with the dullest edge, too nice. That sweet little phrase that turns loyalty into a flaw. I walked back inside without another word, and it came home around 9:30. She smelled like peppermint gum and a panic she was trying to swallow. "Hey, babe," she said like nothing had happened. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights low, fingers wrapped around a glass of untouched water. "We need to talk." And there, in that same calm voice she used to order decaf lattes, she confessed. Not in a blaze of tears. Not with apologies. Just facts. "It was never serious," she said. "I just needed to feel something." I stared at her and said the first honest thing that came to mind. "Well, congratulations. You succeeded." After Anna's confession, things didn't explode. They didn't even boil. They just cooled. Like a cup of coffee left on the counter while someone forgets to care. We entered a strange purgatory. A marriage of logistics. We still lived in the same house, shared the same fridge, even passed each other in the hallway like coworkers who once dated and now pretended it never happened. There were no more shared meals, though. I cooked for myself. She started eating out more, claimed work was busy. I didn't ask questions. I just logged every excuse like timestamps on a security feed I never asked to install. "You're being distant," she said one night, folding laundry on the couch like the world hadn't shifted. Like she hadn't detonated a decade of trust and handed me the debris like a souvenir. "Yeah," I said. "I'm working on a new personality. One that doesn't cry when it gets betrayed." She didn't respond. Just folded another shirt. Probably Levi's. And here's where it gets pathetic. I still hoped. Some sliver of me thought she'd realize what she'd lost, drop to her knees in the living room, and whisper, "I messed up. I want to fix this." But that part of me was starting to die. Quietly, painlessly. Like a light bulb dimming before it gives out. About 2 weeks after her confession, I started seeing things. Little clues. Clues that Levi wasn't a mistake. He was a plan. One morning, I found a rental application half filled out in her handwriting. Anna Whitmore, occupation, marketing director, emergency contact, Levi Harding. No mention of me. No trace of the man she married. I stared at the paper like it might dissolve. But it didn't. It stayed right there on the desk, glowing with the quiet cruelty of indifference. That night, I asked her the question I already knew the answer to. "You planning to move out?" She didn't look up from her phone. "Eventually." "Was that something you were going to mention before or after I found the paperwork?" "I figured you'd want me to go," she said, still scrolling. "I didn't think we were doing heart-to-hearts anymore." "We're not," I said. But a courtesy text would have been nice. She finally looked up, her eyes tired but unrepentant. "You've changed." "No," I said. "You stopped pretending I mattered." If you've ever watched someone lie with the calm of a yoga instructor, you'll understand how I felt watching Anna move through our house like a ghost with a to-do list. Her face was smooth. Her tone? Crisp. Like the betrayal never happened, as if it was some temporary lapse, like misplacing your keys instead of misplacing your vows. But here's the thing about being quiet for too long. You start listening. Not just to words, but to patterns. Door clicks. Voice pitch. The silence between text notifications. So I did what any betrayed, borderline insomniac husband with too much time and a stable Wi-Fi connection might do. I started observing. Nothing illegal. Just awareness. Digital breadcrumbs. I already had admin access to the shared Google Calendar. She never bothered to change it. That's where I first saw it. The event, dinner, 7:30, Osteria Grace. No location tagged. No client name listed. Just dinner. Repeating weekly. Osteria Grace was a candlelit, two-fork kind of place. The same place I took her for our 4th anniversary. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I booked a table one night under a different name. Watched from across the restaurant while she and Levi clinked wine glasses and leaned in like high schoolers discovering foreheads. She laughed. Head tilted, hair tucked behind the ear. Classic Anna. Except the earrings weren't hers. I mean, they were hers now, I suppose, but I didn't buy them. And I had a good memory for things I'd never given. I didn't approach. I didn't send a drink. I just left early, dropped a 20 for a coffee I didn't drink, and walked out into the night with a different kind of clarity. They weren't having an affair anymore. They were building a life. That's when I started cataloging. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for sanity. For the moments when I'd question whether it was really that bad. Whether maybe I was too cold, too forgettable, too safe. Nope. There were photos. Emails. A shared Spotify playlist titled Late Drives, his name on every song edition. One entry caught my eye, All the Good Girls Go to Hell. Subtle. I took screenshots. Archived texts. Watched the IP history of her laptop light up like a pinball machine every time he stayed over. I had enough evidence to burn the whole thing down, but I wasn't ready for fire yet. Not until I knew exactly how high I wanted the flames to reach. By the time December rolled around, Anna had officially stopped pretending. No more fake smiles. No more excuses. She started coming home late with makeup already removed, heels in her hand, and that faraway look in her eyes that said her mind had already moved zip codes. I stopped asking questions. I already had the answers, stacked neatly in a hidden folder on a hard drive disguised as a book of Sudoku puzzles. There were receipts, phone logs, screenshots, things she didn't know I could get and probably wouldn't care if she did. But I didn't collect them to confront her. I collected them the way an archaeologist collects bones, not to bring anything back to life, but to understand how it died. It was around this time that I got the idea. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not a vengeful guy. I'm the guy who still holds doors open for strangers and thanks the cashier twice just for scanning my groceries. But there's a certain kind of peace that comes when you realize someone thinks you're too passive to ever retaliate. That peace? It's electric. So I made a decision, not to lash out, but to orchestrate something. Something clean. Something final. And it started with the Christmas party. Anna's company threw one every year, a lavish ordeal with catered hors d'oeuvres and an open bar. They invited spouses as a formality, but most people brought whoever they were actually sleeping with. In Anna's case, both categories were Levi now. So I RSVP'd. She didn't expect that. "You're coming?" she asked, blinking over her coffee cup. I nodded. Why not? Could use some eggnog and small talk. She stared at me for a beat too long. Okay. Just don't make it awkward, okay? I smiled. Of course not. The night of the party, I wore the suit she always liked, the charcoal one with the sharp shoulders and the navy tie that brought out my eyes, according to her. She looked surprised when I came downstairs. You look, she trailed off. I didn't wait for her to finish. I just handed her coat over and held the door open. We drove in silence. Smooth jazz on the radio, the kind that sounds like an apology no one means. She scrolled through her phone. I watched the city lights pass like people I used to know. At the party, Levi found us before the shrimp cocktails did. Callum, he said, all polite teeth and coward eyes. Good to see you. I shook his hand. Firm. Direct. No smile. Levi, you're taller than I remember. He chuckled nervously. You two make it okay driving in? Anna stepped between us. We're fine. Let's grab some drinks. And just like that, I was the third wheel in my own marriage. but I didn't mind. I had a different itinerary. Over the next 2 hours, I did what I do best. I observed. Watched how Levi couldn't keep his hand off her waist. How Anna laughed a little too loudly at his jokes. How neither of them seemed particularly concerned about the ring still on her finger. I slipped away after the first toast. No one noticed. Why would they? Upstairs, the event coordinator's office was empty. The door had a flimsy lock I bypassed with a flathead from my glove box. Inside, I left a small, neatly wrapped gift box on the desk. Addressed to Anna. No name, no return address. Just a silver bow and a note inside. This isn't revenge. It's revelation. Love. See. The gift? A USB drive. On it was a digital scrapbook of their affair, emails, texts, hotel receipts, even a few clips from the security camera I'd quietly installed in our garage. Tasteful, nothing scandalous. Just enough to make the board of directors and her HR department reconsider their zero tolerance for internal fraternization policy. You see, Levi wasn't just her lover. He was her direct subordinate. By the time the party ended, the package was on its way to every member of her leadership team via scheduled email, sent from an anonymous Proton Mail account, with a subject line that read, "You might want to address this before Monday." That was Thursday. Friday came and went. Saturday morning, she stormed into the kitchen like a thunderclap. "What did you do?" she hissed, hair tangled, robe askew, her phone clutched like a blade. "Good morning to you too. Don't play dumb." The emails. The files. Who else knows? I shrugged, calm as a lake in winter. No idea. You should probably check with HR. Her face turned pale. "You've ruined everything." I leaned back in my chair, coffee mug in hand. "No, Anna. You ruined it. I just sent out the invitations." She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. And maybe she hadn't. Maybe she only ever saw the version of me that folded socks and forgave easily. Not this one. Not the man who watched her light the bridge and decided to pave a better road. She didn't speak after that. She just left, packed in a flurry, called someone, probably Levi, and peeled out of the driveway like something was chasing her. I didn't follow. I just sipped my coffee and smiled at the silence she left behind. It was the most honest sound I'd heard in years. They say the absence of sound is its own language, and after Anna left, my house became fluent. There were no more half-finished mugs on the counter, no perfume lingering in the hallway, no faint hum of a hairdryer at 7 a.m. Just silence. Not peaceful, not eerie, just neutral. Like the house itself was relieved to no longer host a lie. Her clothes were gone by Sunday. She must have come back while I was out grabbing groceries, because the closet looked freshly emptied. A single hanger remained, a wire one from the dry cleaners. I almost laughed. Poetic, really. Nothing says closure like an abandoned hanger. On Monday, I got a call from her mother. "Callum," the voice on the line said, brittle as old paper, "I don't know what's going on with you two, but Anna's a mess." A mess. Not wrong. Not guilty. Just a mess. I paused. I imagine it's hard being professionally embarrassed. "Is this about work?" she asked, tone sharp. "Did you report something?" "No," I said truthfully. "I just distributed something." There was a pause long enough to fit a confession in. "She said you set her up." "I didn't have to set her up," I said calmly. "She gift-wrapped her own downfall. I just attached a label." Silence. Then, the voice softened. "You were always the calm one. That's what worried me. The calm ones never scream, they just disappear. Then you'll appreciate what comes next." I hung up before she could ask what that meant. Because I wasn't done. Not yet. See, I hadn't just sent her affair files to HR. I timed the email cascade to land on another inbox, too. Levi's fiancée. Yep. Surprise. The guy who helped wreck my marriage had a ring on layaway for someone else. Her name was Emily. Sweet woman. I'd met her once, years ago, when she came to the office holiday party and smiled at everyone like she wasn't 2 days away from discovering heartbreak. I sent her everything in a clean, zip folder, titled, "A Few Things to Consider Before Your Bridal Shower." No message. No explanation. Just context. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't need an introduction. Midweek, I got another text from Anna. "You think this makes you strong? It makes you cruel." I didn't respond. I'd already said everything that mattered, and anything more would just dilute it. But I read the text twice. Not because it hurt, because it confirmed I was right. See, Anna had always confused silence with submission. She thought I stayed quiet because I was afraid to speak. But the truth? I was listening, recording, preparing. And now that she was out there, job suspended, reputation dented, Levi ghosting her like a man suddenly aware of consequences, she was discovering that silence can cut deeper than any scream. Later that night, I cleaned out the garage. Not for any practical reason. I just wanted to touch things that hadn't lied to me. I found the anniversary scrapbook she made after our 5th year. Pages of concert stubs, dinner receipts, Polaroids of us in ridiculous hats at that photo booth in Nashville. I stared at the handwriting under one picture. I want to grow old with this man, and felt nothing. Not anger, not regret. Just the faint curiosity of someone reading a stranger's diary. I tossed it in the donation box. No need to burn it. The real fire had already come and gone. Thursday brought a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter, folded in a plain envelope. No return address. I knew the handwriting immediately. It was Anna's. Callum, I don't expect you to read this, but I need to say it. I never thought we'd end this way. I keep replaying things in my head, what I said, what I didn't say, when I started drifting and didn't stop myself. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I know I lost that. I'm writing because I keep dreaming about our quiet mornings. You, making coffee. Me, pretending I was still asleep just so I could hear you humming in the kitchen. I don't think I ever told you, but that's when I loved you most. When you didn't know I was watching. I hope someday you find someone who doesn't get tired of comfort. Who doesn't mistake loyalty for stagnation. Someone who sees you even when you're folding socks. I was too foolish to know what I had. And too selfish to admit when I lost it. I read it once. Then I placed it in the drawer beside my bed. Not out of sentimentality, but because sometimes you keep artifacts not for what they meant, but for what they failed to stop. That was the last I heard from her. She didn't show up again. Not at the door. Not in my inbox. Not even through mutual friends. It was like she finally realized I wasn't coming to save her from the wreckage. I was the one who lit the fuse. And I walked away before the smoke could reach my lungs. You'd think after torching the last threads of a marriage, a man might feel something. Regret, maybe. A little loneliness. But me? I felt clear. Like I'd spent years breathing second-hand smoke and someone finally cracked a window. Still, the mind's a funny thing. It doesn't always care about logic. It likes to wander when the dust settles. And mine started wandering late at night, when the kettle stopped whistling and the world went so still you could hear your own thoughts turning in circles. I didn't miss her. Not really. But sometimes I missed having someone to pour coffee for. Someone to fight with about how the fitted sheets should be folded. Stupid things. Domestic things. Ghosts, really. And wouldn't you know it, just as those ghosts started getting louder, someone else knocked on my door. It was a Saturday. Early spring. Windy enough that the front porch flag danced like it was nervous. I opened the door, expecting a delivery or maybe a neighbor borrowing salt. Instead, I got Emily. Levi's fiancée. Or, I suppose, ex-fiancée. She looked different than I remembered. Paler, thinner, but with a clarity in her eyes that hadn't been there the last time we met at a company event 2 Christmases ago. She wore no makeup, no ring, no expression except quiet resolve. Hi, she said. Just that. I nodded once. Emily, I'm not here to yell. Or throw anything. Didn't think you were, I said, stepping aside. Come in. She didn't sit when we reached the living room. Just stood near the window, arms folded like armor. I got your email, she said, voice steady. Figured you did. At first, I thought it was fake. Or some ex trying to stir the pot. I raised an eyebrow. And then I saw the receipts. The texts. The photo of them outside the Marriott. Silence. She let it hang before continuing. I left him. Called off the wedding. Told my parents. Returned the dress. The whole rom-com meltdown package, minus the music montage. I didn't say anything. What could I say? Then she surprised me. Thank you. I looked up. For not letting me walk into that marriage blind. I nodded, unsure what else to do. She stepped toward the fireplace, tracing a finger along the mantel like she was collecting dust or memories. You know, she said, they still think we're the bad ones. I smirked. Of course. That's the comfort zone of cowards. She glanced over, and for a moment we shared something strange. Not attraction. Not pity. Just a kind of mutual understanding that only exists between people who've seen the same kind of storm. I just needed to say it in person, she said. I wanted to see you once, to look at the man who didn't scream, didn't threaten, just pulled the right string and let the truth do the rest. I exhaled slowly. Wasn't always that clean in here. I'm sure. She stepped back toward the door. Paused. Do you ever wonder if they regret it? Regret's tricky, I said. They regret getting caught. But I don't think they regret the betrayal. That takes a kind of soul you either have or you don't. She nodded once, then left. Just like that. No drama. No fire. Just a door closing behind a woman who'd been burned by the same flame. The next week was quiet. Too quiet. Until Wednesday evening, when I came home and found the envelope. No stamp. Just resting against my front door like a lost cat. Inside? A printed invitation. You were cordially invited to celebrate the engagement of Anna Whitmore and Levi Harding. My breath didn't catch. My hands didn't shake. I just smiled. Because of course they would. When you throw your integrity into a blender and call it love, the least you can do is put a ribbon on top. I poured a drink and sat down with the invitation like it was a riddle. They hadn't included a venue. Just a QR code to RSVP for details. Subtle. I scanned it. The page opened with pastel colors and a header in cursive font. Anna and Levi, love after all. I almost laughed. It included a quote. Sometimes love means letting go of the wrong person to make space for the right one. Classic. Below, a date. 2 months out. A Saturday. Outdoor venue, catered, cocktail attire. No mention of a gift registry. Which made me think maybe, just maybe, they weren't completely shameless. But then again, they'd sent me an invite. So maybe they were. It was a trap, of course. Not a real invitation. More like a dare. A reminder that they got the ending they wanted. That they were still standing. But here's the thing, so was I. I didn't throw the invitation out. I didn't shred it. I pinned it to the fridge. Next to the receipt for the coffee maker I'd bought myself last week. Because sometimes, the smallest reminders are the sharpest. They cut not with rage, but with clarity. And I had 2 months to sharpen mine. You'd think that after being stabbed in the back, RSVPing to the wedding would be the last thing on my mind. But when someone sends you an invite like a power move, there are only 2 ways to respond: ignore it or outclass it. I chose the second. I clicked the RSVP link, selected attending, and even picked the steak dinner. Might as well enjoy the catering. Then I typed a short note in the comments box. Looking forward to seeing how the vows line up with the timeline. See? Petty? Maybe. But it was also surgical. Because deep down, Anna knew. She knew that somewhere, I had enough ammo to turn her fairy tale into a cautionary tale. And now, she had to guess what I'd do with it. 2 days later, I got a text. Please don't come. No hello. No context. Just that. I stared at the message for a while, then typed a reply and deleted it. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of my words. I was already in her head. I didn't need to be in her inbox, too. Instead, I started preparing. Not for war. For closure. I showed up at the venue 15 minutes before the ceremony. The place was textbook Pinterest, ivy walls, mason jar lanterns, a string quartet playing an ironic version of Can't Help Falling in Love. I wore a charcoal suit, no tie, and a calm that scared people more than any outburst ever could. People stared. Some recognized me. A few whispered. One of Levi's cousins gave me a polite nod, then ducked his head like he didn't want to be caught associating with the ghost at the garden party. I didn't flinch. I just took a seat in the back row and watched the show. First came the guests with cameras and cocktails, laughing like this was a reunion and not a moral crime scene. Then Levi, smug in a white tux, hands twitching slightly as he shook the officiant's hand. And finally Anna. She walked down the aisle like she was floating. Classic updo. Lace dress. That fake, polished smile she reserved for events where no one knew the backstory. But I wasn't there for her. Not really. I was there for what came after. The ceremony itself was forgettable. Generic promises. Scripted laughter. A few tears. A declaration of love that had the emotional depth of a sales pitch. When the officiant said, "If anyone has reason these two should not be wed," I didn't move. Because this wasn't about stopping them. It was about finishing me. When they kissed, I clapped. 1 beat too loud. Just enough for Levi to glance my way. His smile faltered, just a flicker, before returning. I stayed for the reception. Sat at a table near the exit, next to a woman named Bridget who spent the first 15 minutes trying to place me. When she asked, "So how do you know the couple?" I smiled and said, "I'm the ex-husband." She choked on her rose. I helped her to a napkin. "Sorry," I said. Per table placement. After that, word traveled. Eyes followed. The photographer hesitated near me more than once, unsure whether to include me in the background of her curated fantasy. Then came the speeches. The best man went first, some forgettable college buddy with a man bun and a story about Vegas. Then the maid of honor, Anna's younger sister, who said, "We always knew Anna was meant to be with someone who truly saw her." That one stung. I didn't flinch, but I did tap the side of my wine glass. And finally, the bride and groom gave their thank you speech. Levi thanked their parents, the venue, the universe, and then paused. "And of course," he added, "thanks to everyone who supported us along the way. Even if our beginning wasn't perfect, it brought us here." Anna smiled, frozen. That was her version of a panic attack. I stood up before the applause started. Walked up to the gift table, where a large photo frame of their engagement sat next to a guest book and a sign that said, "Share a memory." I didn't write anything. Instead, I placed a plain envelope beside the frame. Inside was a single photo, Anna and me at our wedding. Her smiling. Me looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that made sense. On the back, I'd written 6 words. "Once, you meant everything to me." And that was it. I left before the cake, before the dancing, before I saw how far people could lie with their eyes. Outside, the sky was clear. The breeze was soft. The parking lot was mostly empty. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like something had been taken from me. I felt like I'd finally let go. The Monday after the wedding, I slept in. Not out of indulgence, but because for the first time in months, I wasn't waking up for anyone else. No pretending. No performance. Just a man, alone, in a bed that finally felt like his. I made breakfast without glancing at the clock. Eggs, toast, silence. The chair across from me stayed empty, and I didn't feel the urge to fill it with conversation or someone else's opinion about the toast being too dark. I went for a walk. Past the bookstore Anna used to love. Didn't go in. Not because it hurt, because I didn't have to pretend it meant anything anymore. The healing wasn't cinematic. There were no epiphanies in the rain or strangers offering wise metaphors. Just the slow return of self. The rebuilding of routines. A rediscovery of music I hadn't listened to since she started skipping my playlist for his. One afternoon, I sat in the garage and cleaned old tools. There was something therapeutic about scrubbing rust from a wrench. Like I was reclaiming pieces of a man she'd left behind in her rush for excitement. Some nights, I still checked her social media. Not to miss her, just to confirm I didn't. She posted photos from the honeymoon. Smiling beside Levi in a resort cabana, holding wine glasses above a poolside fire pit. Hashtag new beginnings. I stared at the caption longer than I should have. Then I blocked the account. Not out of anger. Just to give the algorithm one less way to haunt me. 6 weeks after the wedding, I got a letter from Anna's lawyer. Not personal, purely procedural. A final notice requesting my signature on the last round of divorce filings. A house deed transfer, some retirement account adjustments, and an enclosed envelope already stamped for return. It felt sterile. Efficient. She'd once made me a 3-layer cake because I sneezed on my birthday. Now she was signing off on our lives like she was returning a library book. I read the documents. Then I read them again. And I signed. Not because I'd given up, but because I was done asking why. Some things don't end with closure. Some things just end. I mailed the envelope the next morning. Dropped it into the blue box by the pharmacy. Watched it disappear with the rest of the day's forgotten mail. On the walk back home, I passed a small furniture shop. Inside the window was a single chair, leather, high-backed, with just the right kind of solitude built into its frame. I bought it on impulse. Had it delivered by Friday. It sat in the corner of my living room, by the window. And every evening, I sat in it. Not as a ritual. Just as proof that I could create new spaces where old ghosts didn't belong. They say revenge is best served cold. But I learned something else. Sometimes, the quietest revenge is simply outliving the lie. Levi lost his job 2 months after the wedding. Company policy, HR eventually caught up with the details I left like breadcrumbs. Anna resigned to pursue other opportunities. Translation. No one wanted to clean the PR mess. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just moved on. Started consulting for a firm out west. Flew out once a month. Learned to enjoy hotel breakfast in unfamiliar cities. The world felt wide again. One night, in a hotel bar in Seattle, I met someone. She asked what I did. I told her I helped companies build trust through digital infrastructure. She laughed and said, "Must be hard, convincing people they're still safe." I smiled. I don't sell safety. Just systems. What people do with them, that's their choice. We talked for hours. She didn't remind me of Anna. She reminded me of no one. And that was the best part. She didn't become the next chapter, but she reminded me that there was one, and that was enough. As for Anna, the last I heard, they were trying to start a family. Good for them. Kids deserve love. I just hope they learn it from someone else. Not because I hate her, but because I don't think she ever knew what it meant to love without conditions. And me? I'm still folding my socks. Still drinking black coffee. Still playing the same 3 albums on repeat. Only now, I do it without flinching. Because the man she left? He didn't die. He just evolved.